Full name ***. William Henry born, August 21, 1765, Buckingham Palace, London, England. Died, June 20, 1837, Windsor Castle, Berkshire, England. Reign, June 26, 1830 to June 20, 1837. Predecessor, George IV. Successor, Queen Victoria. Parents, King George III and Queen Charlotte. Spouse, Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen ***. William IV***, the third son of King George III, became King of the United Kingdom and Hanover from 1830 until his death in 1837. Known as the Sailor King due to his career in the Royal Navy, William had an unconventional path to the throne. For much of his life, it was assumed that he would not become king, as he was the third son of George III and had older brothers ahead of him in the line of succession. However, the deaths of his elder brothers, George IV and Frederick, Duke of York, left him as the heir. Born at Buckingham Palace, William spent much of his youth in the shadow of his more famous older brothers, George, the future George IV, and Frederick. At the age of 13, he joined the Royal Navy, serving during the American Revolutionary War and rising through the ranks. His naval career allowed him to gain valuable experience and travel to various parts of the British Empire, which earned him respect as a man of action and pragmatism. Although he retired from the Navy in 1790, his time in the service shaped his character and leadership style. He was known for being plain-spoken and approachable, a stark contrast to the more aloof attitudes of many of his royal contemporaries. Before becoming king, William lived a relatively private and unassuming life. He had a long-standing relationship with the actress Dorothea Jordan, with whom he had 10 illegitimate children. In 1818, William married Princess Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen, but their 2 daughters died in infancy, leaving him without a legitimate heir. As a monarch, William IV is remembered for his moderate and pragmatic approach to governance. His reign saw the passage of significant reforms, including the Reform Act of 1832, which began to transform the British electoral system by extending voting rights and reducing the influence of the aristocracy in Parliament. Although William initially opposed this reform, fearing it would weaken royal power, he eventually gave it his royal assent after widespread public pressure and political unrest. William IV's reign was relatively short, lasting only 7 years, but it was a crucial period in British history. His support of political reform helped to lay the groundwork for the more democratic Britain that emerged in the 19th century. Upon his death in 1837, William was succeeded by his niece, Queen Victoria, marking the beginning of the Victorian era. While he was not a transformative or revolutionary monarch, William IV is remembered for his common touch, his naval service, and his role in overseeing important political reforms during a time of great change in British society. His reign is often viewed as a bridge between the Georgian era and the more progressive Victorian age. William IV became king unexpectedly on June 26, 1830, following the death of his older brother, King George IV, who died without legitimate heirs. At the age of 64, William was the oldest person to assume the British throne at that time. His path to kingship was unconventional and marked by the deaths of his elder brothers. Many expected his reign to be short due to his age, but William embraced his new role with energy. Despite being less formal and aloof than his predecessors, William was popular with the public. His approachable and down-to-earth nature earned him the nickname *** Sailor King ***, stemming from his long service in the Royal Navy. He lacked the grandeur and extravagance of George IV, opting instead for a more modest and simple royal lifestyle. William IV's reign occurred during a period of significant political and social change in Britain. The country was facing rising demands for political reform, especially with regard to the electoral system, which was outdated and unfair. The Industrial Revolution had led to the growth of cities and new social classes, yet parliamentary representation remained skewed towards rural areas and aristocratic interests. There was growing unrest, and calls for reform were becoming louder. One of the most important events of William IV's reign was the passage of the Reform Act of 1832. This act aimed to address some of the issues within the British electoral system by redistributing seats in the House of Commons, reducing the number of rotten boroughs, constituencies with very few voters that were controlled by wealthy patrons, and extending voting rights to more middle-class men. Initially, William was hesitant to support the bill, worried about the potential loss of royal and aristocratic power. However, faced with increasing pressure from reformist Whigs and large-scale public protests, William dissolved Parliament in 1831, allowing for new elections that gave reformers a stronger mandate. Eventually, the Reform Act was passed, marking a turning point in British democracy and diminishing the influence of the traditional aristocracy. During William IV's reign, British foreign policy was generally stable. One significant event was Britain's growing role in abolishing the transatlantic slave trade. Although the trade had been outlawed in 1807, slavery itself remained legal in British colonies. William IV, like his predecessors, played a role in overseeing the gradual abolition of slavery throughout the British Empire, culminating in the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833. This act officially freed enslaved people in British colonies, although compensation was controversially paid to former slave owners, not to the freed individuals. In terms of colonial affairs, William's reign saw the consolidation of British rule in India and growing involvement in Australia and Canada. These regions were becoming more economically important to the British Empire, and efforts were made to expand influence and strengthen governance. As king, William IV was married to Adelaide of Saxe-Meiningen, a German princess whom he married in 1818. Their marriage was seen as a relatively happy and stable one, though it was marked by personal tragedy. The couple had 2 daughters who both died in infancy, leaving William without a direct heir. However, before his marriage to Adelaide, William had a long relationship with the actress Dorothea Jordan, with whom he had 10 illegitimate children, known as the Fitzclarence family. Though these children could not inherit the throne, William provided for them generously. William IV's reign was characterized by his relatively open and cooperative relationship with government ministers. Unlike some previous monarchs who tried to exert more direct control over government, William understood the increasing power of Parliament and often deferred to his prime ministers, particularly Earl Grey, leader of the reformist Whigs, and later Sir Robert Peel. He saw the role of the monarch as one of a constitutional figurehead, and though he had personal views on issues such as reform, he rarely imposed them, allowing Parliament to take the lead. This approach to governance helped further cement the evolving British system of constitutional monarchy.